Wow. Hey, much love and respect. Pura vida, mi gente. Thanks for tuning in once again. Appreciate you guys taking the time to do that. Make sure to like and share the video. All right. Again, we are in part 3 on the research we're doing to the founder of the NOI, or the Nation of Islam, WD Fard, aka everything else. He has so many aliases, I couldn't even name them all right now. It's like 50 of them, right? So, again, disclaimer, like I said in the first part, I knew a lot of people get emotional and stuff like that, and that definitely happened. So we got a lot of comments from members of the NOIA or people associated to them, telling me, well, I'm not a part of it, but I think WD Mahard is a man, like all this other stuff, like sugarcoating literally the information I'm kind of showing. Again, this is not to go at specific people or to try to shame people. It's actually to help you see something. You know what I mean? Same thing happened when I first started my channel, and you're talking about so-called Black Indians. Pan-Africans came at me hard, and been doing so for years. Eventually, it got quiet. They don't come bother me, or I just block them. You know. Then I had my series on the Moorish Science Temple, and got a lot of hurt people on that as well. And they would come and do the same thing, and then go do videos about me and for years, and eventually they get blocked. Eventually the people see, the people get to distinguish and see the information and verify on their own, past where it's coming from, like not just looking at my info, but looking at their info and comparing it and seeing, okay, yeah, he does have a point about this. And I know the real ones out there, you know, eventually see what's real and what's not, so that's all I care about, not anybody crying or making excuses or sugarcoating what we're showing. We're in 2024. All right. And just like it happened before, now we're talking about the Nation of Islam. And so, of course, we're going to get those people come now all hurt and stuff. We got so many hurt groups coming at me from every type of ethnicity, from all over the world, with every color. Truth hurts. History is very, um, and it's a very, very emotional attachment to people when it talks about history, because it deals with their beliefs a lot of the time, and you know following people blindly and just going into something just on religion alone, just like because you believe and that's it. Eventually, you are going to get hurt when it comes to historical facts. you know that's what we try to do. That's what I've always been trying to do. you know and I just say, hey, I know that there's real people out there, and over the years we've put out so much info and videos, and so I've even gotten testimonies from a lot of the people, ex-Pan-Africans, not just ex-Moorish signs. There's still Moors, but at least they come with respect and say, hey man, I respect you, man, because you know what, that is a little funny or whatever. They'll see what I'm talking or pointing out. Not They don't get in their feelings after a while, and the emotion goes away, and then they start seeing the history and the facts. And hey man, gotta empty your cup sometimes. So again, got a lot of comments in the last 2 parts, from hurt people, and it's okay. Truth hurts. It's all right. It's okay. We're gonna begin today with little video. It's about 20 minutes long before I start reading a book, just so we can gather more people to come as well, and just to point out something we've already gone over in the first 2 parts. Just somebody else talking about it, and also we're gonna take a look at the famous picture they show about of sorry, not about, but of WD Fard, or Farard. People want me to say Farard. Don't say Fard. Okay, Farard, aka all a bunch of other names, right? And so how that picture is actually altered from an original. They did touch it up a little bit. Believe it or not, the NOI did touch it up, and we're gonna get it from the horse's mouth themselves. We're not lying. All right, we're not just making this up. Okay. Appreciate you guys being here. Again, thank you for taking the time on your Sunday to come here and listen, and possibly, hopefully, learn something that you might have not thought about or researched, due to biases or just beliefs. You know, you don't want to go that route. I know it, but you know, that's how that's how it is. So this is a more original picture of what they have. They used to have hanged up in Elijah's home, I believe. That's where he had, or in some temple they had. You know, the one they show us usually of um David D. Fard. I do have another one here before I begin. Just want to go over kind of like what we're used to seeing, you know. But people don't kind of Google this stuff. They don't believe. So this is the one right here, the first one, and the fourth one is kind of what we always see, right? But I just showed you there's a different one with that same kind of look, but it's different, darker suit. The hair's not highlighted and all that. Then we got all the other ones, you know, with mugshots and everything else, which they say is not him, but it's undeniable it's him. So here's what I was saying, Elijah with the picture on top. You know, that's a little altered kind of photoshopped picture. We're gonna discuss that real quick right now. All right. Again, this ain't personal. Just trying to inform you of something. Maybe help you, hopefully, in the long run. All religions are man-made. That's not to do with spirituality or your connection to the Creator, the Most High. You know, of all. You know, wow, the breath of life, breath. All right. So a lot of people like get upset, you know, when I kind of say all these things, but hey, I'm just trying to show you sign, okay? It's not about following people blindly. Men, yeah, Most High and men is two different things, okay? So here's the more original picture. Let me just go ahead and get started with this. All right, let me see how much we got. Okay, we got a good amount of people. All right. Yeah, hey moderators, just help me out if you see anybody, anybody getting disrespectful or trolling, just, warn them, and then if they don't stop, if they're respectful, you can time them out for 24 hours. If they get disrespectful, just hide them from my channel. Okay. All right. So we're gonna start real quick. All right, with this little video here, and before I begin reading.
So check.
All right. All right, so we're gonna hear what they have to say about that image here. These are people from, the Nation of Islam themselves. Okay. Shout out to, just want to say shout out to Alam Khan Productions, where I got this clip from, a YouTube channel, just in case, All right, so let's hear what they got to say about the picture real quick.
Check this out. Here's a story on this picture of Master Fard Muhammad. So Imam Sultan.
So this is where the picture was, right here, then.
Yeah, right there.
Wow.
Let me show you what's going to be there and how Allah blessed me with that picture. So Imam Sultan, I said, hey, I need a picture because I found this 100-year-old piece of glass. I want to put the Savior on the glass so he reflects with all this yellow when you come in the room. He walks up. And I just said, Assalamu alaikum, and he did like that. He, he's an old brother, like 80-something years old. And the brother ain't saying nothing. I'm uncomfortable because I feel like we're being rude. He's an elder. And I said, sir, is there anything, like I can help you with? And he went in his pocket and did like this. Let me show you what he did. When he opened up his little prayer book, he had the original negative of Master Farad Muhammad.
And that actually looked a little different than the ones we usually see.
That's right. This is his little booklet he kept in his pocket, been in his pocket for 40, 50 some years. He came in the nation when he was a teenager.
That is insane.
So I'm going to dedicate this room to him because the Savior sent him to give us that picture.
And you know what's funny? Me looking at this from my perspective, I can see the black features in the
real one.
Yes, I can see it.
Somebody must have altered that other painting. You can even tell he's sitting in a chair.
I can see his black features now.
Yeah, look at that.
Look at his nose.
See?
Yeah, it looks a lot different. Yeah,
Look at his nose.
that's crazy.
That's crazy. That brother had this in his pocket.
Wow.
Yeah, that look different than when we.
All right. So that was them letting you know that it was altered. It's not just me saying that, okay? We're going to get Elijah's Muhammad's son saying it too. All right. So what we got here, just to give a shout out, just in case people get offended or anything. So shout out to also Resume Byron, just like it sounds, YouTube channel. All right. We got the couple of these clips from. I edited them out a little bit. All right. So just hear what he's got to say, right? Let's go. And I also, I just saw somebody comment a little hurt, talking about as a member of the nation, this is funny, so-called this is funny. I know it's funny. That's what I'm saying. It's funny that, what's funny is that people choose to ignore what we're showing. That's what's funny. Let's go.
Ford got out of prison in 1929. He visited his former common law wife Hazel and their young son for 2 weeks before moving to Chicago to start a new life. As a means of making money, he peddled small trinkets such as cheap umbrellas, cheap raincoats, fake silks, and hair relaxers for black women. These myriad small items were mailed to him in care of W.D. Ford General Delivery, Chicago, Illinois, from the Marceline Chemical Company, located in Richmond, Virginia. Wallace Farad did not have naturally straight hair, and neither did he wear it parted to one side, as shown in the infamous NOI portrait. Farad had wavy hair, which he wore combed to the back. He used a hair relaxer to straighten his curly-like, wavy hair before posing for the infamous NOI portrait, which he had taken at the photography studio that was located next door to the NOI Temple on Hastings Street in Detroit, Michigan. The Nation of Islam defenders stubbornly argued that the mugshots of Wally Dodd Ford couldn't be those of Master Farad because Wally Dodd Ford had wavy hair and Master Farad's hair was straight. Elijah Muhammad's son debunked that argument.
So as you guys heard, a lot of the people say, well, no, that's not him. That's not Master Farad. That's a different Wally Dodd Farad. That's a different one because he has wavy hair. And the picture they showed, of him has straight hair, right? So, I mean, come on, guys, he doesn't have woolly hair, first of all. So he can straighten his hair a lot easier than most so-called black folks. Remember, this guy is most likely not black, so-called what you would consider a so-called black man. More like a Middle Eastern or East Indian, Turkish, maybe even Mediterranean. Again, we went over his many different origin possibilities, right? So let's just keep going what he's saying. All right, so that's one of his mugshots right here, right?
Take a listen.
That picture of his, which is shown in the final call and some other places. Is that supposed to be a genuine photograph of Farad or likeness or?
It's a cosmetic. It's a made-up photo.
Oh, I see. That's
his hair was not that straight.
yeah.
No,
right.
he used some kind of application to straighten his hair. We have pictures of him that was not freely distributed. In fact, they were kept from the community. Yeah. But I have one.
Oh, that would be.
And his hair was not parted. His hair was kind of wavy.
The African American.
All right, so that was Elijah Muhammad's son, letting you know it's a composite. It's not a real original photo, okay? They changed up his shape, his nose. They were trying not to make him really look like the guy, you know, coming out of the West with all these mug shots, all right? That was his own son telling you he's straightening his hair. So that argument that that's not him just because the other guy has a little bit of wavy hair, that doesn't mean anything, all right? Okay, Teresa.
American organization known as the Nation of Islam was founded in 1930 by a mysterious small-framed man with a shady past who introduced himself to poor black people of Detroit, Michigan as W.D. Farad. Though he spelled his name as F-A-R-D, he pronounced it as if it had two syllables, Farad. He told those poor black people, most of whom were completely illiterate, that the W in his name stood for Wallace, but he never told them what the initial D stood for. After being arrested 2 years later in 1932 as the leader of a strange cult that encouraged ritual murder, as a stipulation for his release, he was ordered to disband his cult, leave Detroit, and do not return. Although he snuck in and out of Detroit after his release, even though he was told not to return, he was apprehended again in Detroit less than 6 months later on May 25th, 1933. When he was trying to rent a room at the same hotel he was arrested at only months earlier. The hotel clerk recognized him and summoned the police. Hauled off to jail, he was photographed and fingerprinted. Released the next day, he was given a stern warning by the judge that if he was ever caught in Detroit again, he would be charged with accessory to murder. Farad left the court and Detroit and went back to Chicago, where he was eventually arrested there as well on a charge of investigation as a con man. After his release from the Chicago jail, he lectured Elijah Muhammad briefly by way of mailed letters. There is no evidence that Elijah Muhammad ever wrote him back because Farad's letters bore no return address. Elijah's last known correspondence from Farad was in February 1934 in the form of a so-called Supreme Wisdom lesson. After several months of not seeing Farad and with no further correspondence from Farad, Elijah Muhammad realized that Farad was gone for good. Members of the Nation of Islam believe that Farad was the son of a black Arabian father named Alfonso and a white Russian Jewish mother named Baby G. Nothing is Arabic about the name Alfonso, and nothing is Russian about the name Baby G. But this is how Farad operated. He made up things as he went about creating doctrines for his new cult. Elijah Muhammad taught his followers that Farad told him that his father was a very dark-skinned black man, and his mother was a white woman from the Caucasus Mountains. This made-up origin story that Farad told Elijah was Farad's explanation of why he did not look black. This made-up origin story served two purposes. Number one, as Elijah explained, Farad had to be specially made to look white in order to mingle among white people undetected so he could reach his chosen black brethren. And number two, the story gave comfort to the early 1930s NOI converts who struggled to accept Farad's claim of being black. Wallace Farad's made-up Arabian origin story is far from the truth.
All right, so again, this is real right here. What he was saying. Elijah Muhammad literally said, and I'm gonna show the clip on another part. I have the clips already. Like you're gonna hear from the horse's mouth yourself. He said that his dad literally made him, like he plotted it, he planned it, like he's God. Like I'm gonna have a son who's gonna be a savior. This is what Elijah Muhammad told people. That supposedly Farad told him, right? That his dad was so-called black, very, very dark, and that his dad went to this hill or mountains, I guess the Caucasus. Who's over there? The Khazars, right? Anyways, he went up there and he picked a white woman, so-called white woman, on purpose, so he can have a mixed-looking son, so he can be able to penetrate with so-called white folks and so-called black folks. All right, that's the story that Elijah was telling people. Now, guys, if you just natural mermaid, I hope you watched part 1 and 2. We got this is part 3, guys. If you just joined us, make sure to get back and watch parts 1 and 2. We've gone over a lot of info, all his different origin possibilities, what ethnicity he's most likely. He's either, Middle Eastern Indian, like, Pakistani or Hindu, like, or Mediterranean, like, or Turkish, like those are the possibilities. He's definitely not. And these people, yes, they classified as white. Yeah, like these people were classified as white. Before he reached Detroit, he was going off as white. And we just saw when he got arrested, where he got arrested in that hotel, he was still going off as white. You're gonna see where that hotel was located, all right? And you're gonna see how he was being, white for some people, and he passed as black for others, depending on who he needed to, convince. All right.
Hazel said he had beautiful white straight teeth, black curly hair that he sometimes wore long in the back, a dark Mexican-like complexion, and Caucasian features. She described him as if he was an angel. The general public only became aware of Wallace Farad in 1959 through leaked information to the news media that had been published by a Los Angeles newspaper concerning the Nation of Islam's founder's background, which had been investigated by the FBI. Farad was assigned an FBI number in 1956 because his background was being investigated by the Federal Bureau of Investigations. Before Malcolm Little joined the Nation of Islam in 1952, the Nation of Islam was an unknown all-black organization led by Elijah Muhammad, with a small following of about 400 to 500 members nationwide. Elijah Muhammad was short, mostly bald, uncharismatic, inarticulate, which made it difficult for him to attract, let alone maintain, a large following. Malcolm X, by contrast, was the extreme opposite. Malcolm was very tall, handsome, charismatic, inspirational, electrifying, and articulate. Because of Malcolm X's superior traits and excellent organizational skills, the Nation of Islam grew rapidly by the thousands, which prompted the federal government to take notice, for which the FBI launched an extensive investigation into the Nation of Islam's founder's past, where the FBI discovered that the NOI's God and Savior, Wallace Farad, with aliases, was a former convicted felon who served prison time in California's San Quentin State Prison from 1926 to 1929 for the sale and possession of illegal narcotics.
So they say illegal narcotics. That could just also mean this was during the Prohibition era, like alcohol, as well. And, but he might have had some other things too.
Mr. Wallace Farad Muhammad was a drug dealer in the 1920s before he claimed to be the black man's savior in 1930. By the way, Muhammad was not his last name. It's an alias that he attached to his name in 1933, for which he began using as his surname. His physical appearance allowed him to pass as Spanish, Mexican, New Zealander, Polynesian, Hawaiian, Afghan, Arabian, or any related ethnicity he chose. Farad had coping problems in both worlds. Living as a white man in California in the 1920s, he was arrested several times as a drug dealer and eventually sentenced to prison. By the same token, living as a black man in the early 1930s, he was arrested several times as a religious charlatan. While living as a white man with his common-law wife Hazel, she said she knew nothing about his past because he never mentioned his parents, whether or not he had siblings, where he went to school, or where he was born. In comparison, sociologist Erdman Beynon, who did a study on Farad's cult in the 1930s, wrote that hardly anything was known about his past, except that he claimed to be from the East and used many aliases, including the alias Ford, the alias he used while living in California with his white wife, Hazel.
All right, so we read that whole chapter, that book he's talking about right now, what he's showing you guys on the screen right now. We read the whole chapter in part 2. That's what I'm saying. If you guys just joined us, especially in this series, we're on part 3. Make sure to catch part 1 and 2 so you could be more informed and have a context and background to where we've been, what we've said, what we've shown, and where we're going with the series, okay?
In keeping in step of not revealing anything about his past, in Detroit, Farad told his converts, quote, "Much about myself I will not reveal because the time is not right. You have not yet seen me in my royal robes." And to that point, they never saw him in his royal robes. Elijah Muhammad said he spent 3.5 years with Farad, day and night. Yet, he never knew where Farad lived. In Detroit, Farad would visit Elijah at his home to teach him all day and then leave at night, many times very late. In the FBI's investigation of Farad, a confidential informant reported that Elijah once tried to follow Farad after a long night of teaching to see where Farad lived. Elijah and his mother attempted to follow Farad one night when Farad noticed them trailing behind him. Farad picked up his pace, and as he approached the street corner, he quickly turned. A little while later, when Elijah and his mother got to the same corner, Farad was nowhere in sight. It turned out that Farad lived in a rented hotel room located at 1 West Jefferson Avenue in an all-white neighborhood, the same hotel he was arrested at.
All right, so you get what he's saying, right? He got followed and whatever, but he was staying in this hotel the whole time, right? And as you guys can see in this record right here, where it says color, W, right? Look at the funny thing about this, though. 1933 and then 33, huh? 1933 and then 33. But he has colored, right? And Ford and, yeah. All right, let's keep going.
On both occasions, when he was arrested in Detroit in 1932 and 1933. Farad pretended to be white and lived among white people, but he also pretended to be black when he was running his con game on gullible black people and retreated at night to his rented hotel room in an all-white neighborhood. He had just gotten out of prison in 1929. He didn't have a job. He was unemployed which means he couldn't buy a home or rent an apartment. But he could hustle every day to rent an inexpensive hotel room on a daily basis. After completing his daily scam of grifting money from poor gullible black converts by selling them useless so-called original names and gaudy ID cards, he would retreat to his rented hotel room in an all-white neighborhood where he had set up shop, then get up the next day and do the same thing again until he was eventually caught, arrested, and run out of town. When police first arrested him in November of 1932, the police confiscated hundreds of badly written letters spread all over his hotel room floor, with each correspondent requesting their original names and the promise to pay Farad for their original names.
All right, so you guys heard that, right? What was he doing? He was making up money of creating these, nation ID cards, right, for the new members, and also telling them, well, don't worry, I'll change your fake name, your fake last. These are your last names, guys. These are your last names that would have connected you on genealogy to Indian families, if you knew, if back then, if you knew. Most folks had forgotten, or they didn't care about, or they just thought it was part Indian, or whatever happened, back in those days. But he was literally sealing it, like saying, hey, yeah, these are not your names. I'll give you names. I'll name you X. I'll name you Muhammad. I'll name you Kareem. All that. This is why this is important. A lot of people think we're just trying to shame people. We're not. We're trying to help you understand something. These are your last names. These aren't your slave master names. I hope there still isn't people that are following me and watching videos say, oh, I've been following you for years, still thinking that those last names you got are all slave names or from the white man. These are your last names. These people brought them, a lot of them melanated folks from Europe, so-called black folks from Europe, and they mixed in with the American Indians, giving them the surnames, right? In general, American Indians didn't have last names, they described themselves differently. But this was what's going on, right? Like all these, just like all these leaders coming out in the 1900s, early 1900s, always trying to kind of guide you and telling you you're from somewhere else. They're always doing the same thing, not just him, Garvey, Mr. Drew, Thomas Drew, telling you from somewhere else, not really specifying how much Indian you were. And yeah, they told you about black Europeans, but they're not making you really understand that's you, not separate from you, or that they came and mixed with the Indian, not explaining it correctly, and then still putting you somewhere else in the origin. Okay, so let's continue.
Numerous blank ID cards were confiscated. Since Farad lived in a rented hotel room, where was he eating? Where was he cooking his food? Where was he washing his clothes? Turns out, Farad was eating by Elijah and his family every day when he went to so-called teach Elijah. Elijah's oldest daughter, Ethel, would wash Farad's clothes and cut his hair when he needed it. Recall that early NOI converts said Farad would never turn down a meal. They said he would eat whatever was on the plate, and after eating up everything, he would tell them, don't eat this, don't eat that. Your people in your homeland did not eat these foods. Under the pretense of being their savior, Farad used Elijah Muhammad and his family as a place to eat every day, hang out, and get his clothes washed. Besides the 1877 birth year that's only found in the Nation of Islam made-up theology, the FBI file shows 2 additional birth years used by Farad that perfectly align with the various ages he claimed at different points in his life. Farad also used 1891 and 1893 as birth years, totaling 5 different birth years. He did not want to leave any trails that would lead back to who he was and where he was from. Remember, he moved to northern and midwestern states to leave his past life behind. He wanted to bury his past. The irony of his marriage to the young Mexican in California was that on the marriage certificate as Wally Ford, he listed his mother's name as simply Baby G. 6 years later, Baby G would also be the name of Master Farad Muhammad's mother. Farad told early NOI converts in 1930 that his father's name was Alfonso and his mother's name was simply Baby G. Farad transferred events that happened in California into his Nation of Islam creation gumbo. Various real-life events in California became Nation of Islam doctrines and tenets. Another example of ingredients for his NOI gumbo was in 1917, before he saved up enough money to open a small cafe in Los Angeles, California. He lived in the boarding home of a white family owned by Emmanuel and Anna Bushes. He rented a room from them. This event became another part of the NOI mythological creation mixture. Years later, he would tell early NOI converts in 1930 that when he first came to America, he lived with a white family in Los Angeles, California, while he attended the University of Southern California. Farad told them he was the product of mixed-race parents. He said his father was black, but his mother was white. He told them he had been educated for diplomatic services in London, England, at Oxford University, and could speak 16 languages and write in 10 of them. Because of his non-African American look, or his non-Caucasian American look, and strange teachings that were peppered with Asian, Indian, Buddhist, and snippets of Muslim undertones. Of all the foreign countries he claimed as his origin, for example, New Zealand, Hawaii, Spain, Afghanistan, Arabia, he gave no hints as to where he was actually born. He didn't realize that living his poor day-to-day basic life of being a con man, grifter, and a pathological liar would make history, and his birthplace would be the main discussion. Farad lied so extensively about everything until it's very possible that he never told the truth about anything.
All right. We're gonna continue, guys. Hold on. Let me just get out the book. We're gonna get into a book now. I'm gonna read chapter 10 of this book. Hold on, let me just get the screen ready. Appreciate you guys joining. If you join late, make sure to catch up from the beginning. If you join late to this series, we're on part 3. Make sure to watch parts 1 and 2. It's gonna get deeper and deeper, I would say, you know, based on everything that even the connections it's gonna have to Garvey, the more Science Temple, all that. So stay tuned. Canaanite Temple, yeah, stay tuned. Make sure you're caught up too. We're gonna get into this book real quick. I haven't even read it, you know, I'm gonna read it along with you. So it says here, a shocking expose of the intelligence community secrets activities. It says the Judas factor, the plot to kill Malcolm X. by Carl Evans. Carl Evans wrote extensively on Wallace Bard, and the Nation of Islam doesn't approve of him too much. So we're going to go to a specific chapter. This is a very interesting book we might get into in the future, you know, when it comes to Malcolm X, right? But we'll get into that. We'll get into that. Don't worry. So we're going into chapter 10. It says here, exposing Fard. Okay, exposing Fard. Says the problem with telling a lie is that you've got to tell another lie to conceal the first one, and another to hide the last. All right? That's from Minister Abraham X, Nation of Islam, St. Louis Mosque. Then it says, every son of Islam must gain a victory from a devil. 4 victories and the son will attain his reward. That meant 4, well, you guys will see. We went over that in part 1. That's why they were calling it the voodoo cult. People were literally, you know, trying to go sacrifice so-called white people for them so they can get into, you know, a free trip to Mecca and get into heaven. From Secret Ritual. That's from the Secret Ritual by Wallace D. Fard. All right. It says here, white man is God for cult of Islam. This banner headline over a story in the August 15, 1959 issue of the New Crusader, a Chicago-based African-American newspaper, signaled the start of the FBI's second major counterintelligence offensive aimed at destroying the Nation of Islam. As stated earlier, the first campaign ended successfully in 1942 after the FBI hired black police officers as temporary FBI agents assigned to infiltrate the Nation of Islam. The article's author, Maud Yaqub Khan, an Orthodox Muslim of Pakistani origin, the fact that his middle name is that of the villain of the NOI demonology appears to be a coincidence. Yaqub had gotten his information from a selection of the FBI's file on Wallace Fard, which it released in response to the surge in the NOI membership that had followed the television broadcasts that Haight produced. The information the FBI provided to the New Crusader was incomplete but accurate. However, fortunately for Elijah Muhammad, as it turned out, the author misread the file on a number of crucial points. The article claimed, for example, that Elijah Muhammad and Wallace Fard had concocted the idea for the Nation of Islam when both were incarcerated in a federal prison in Milan, Michigan in 1943. It also claimed that Fard was Turkish and had been a Nazi agent during World War II. Hey, maybe there is something to this story right here. Nazi agent, huh? The agents of chaos around the world. The Khazars, huh? In fact, the sect was founded in Detroit during the economic drought occasioned by the Wall Street stock market crash of 1929, promising food, prosperity, and happiness to anyone who followed him. Wallace Fard Muhammad, the sect's founder, was able to attract hundreds to his meetings during any given week. The cult grew so rapidly that by 1934 there were nearly 7,000 members scattered across 5 states. Black Muslims were taught that Fard was a member of a rich royal Arabian family who lived in Mecca. He had come from the East, he told them, to return America's former slaves, whom he called his long-lost uncles, first to Islam, then back to Africa. Like Father Divine of New York, Noble Drew Ali of Chicago, and Bishop Sweet Daddy Grace of Washington, D.C., just like them, Wallace Fard Muhammad told his followers that he was God in a human form. Just like them, huh? Posing as a silk peddler in 1930, Ford began knocking on the doors of African Americans and West Indians who lived the Detroit ghetto known as Paradise Valley. Most of them were among the many African Americans who left farms in the South stranded in the 30s by the receding tide of the Great Depression. These struggling new urbanites, lacking both formal education and street smarts, made a receptive, unquestioning audience for Fard's unusual ministry. Always introducing himself as Wallace Fard Muhammad, Fard was a sight to behold. His hair was straight and blacker than oil. You know, he's straight, remember? His skin was swarthy. Many African Americans mistook him for a Latino or an Arab. So when they're saying swarthy, they literally mean, you know, like how he looked, like Middle Eastern, you know. So again, Swarthy, this is what we've learned. It can be used for any type of shade of dark. So even very light, dark complexion people. Okay. So, but as they're saying here, he could pass as Latino or Arab. Most likely was, you know, as Detroit had America's largest Arab American community in the early 1930s. His eyes, one woman recalled, were an unusual color. They looked maroon, she said. He wore expensive looking robes and usually either a maroon fez, or a turban. A fez, huh? Selling silks seemed to be his ploy for recruiting new followers. As he sold his wares from door to door, he inquired about the individual's dietary habits. Do you eat pork? He would ask. The answer was invariably yes. Pork had become a staple of the African American's diet during slavery. Huh, dodge the hijack. So remember, this book is written in the 1990s. He's still going with the whole, this author, even though he's exposing somebody, still shows his lack of knowledge of certain things, believing that he's also from Africa and the whole slavery story, right? Out of Africa and West African slaves coming over here, and that every black folk was a slave. That's not true. Didn't we just read a book the other day? Free so-called African Americans of North Carolina, Virginia, Maryland. There's so many in there. And what happened? What did we find out about that so-called African American or free Negroes? They were Waccamaw Indians, right? They were Waccamaw Indian, Lumbees, and all these other Indian tribes. They were being reclassified as so-called free Negroes or African Americans. So again, a lot of context missing in the book, but we're just pulling out the babies, right? You got to dodge the hijacks. Be ready. You guys are well informed now. Don't ever eat pork again, Farr replied hauntingly. He promised a potential convert that if she would invite him over for dinner, he would show her what to eat to live long, healthy life. So that's how he got inside the people's families, inside their homes, okay? Within 6 months, Farr had persuaded more than 500 African Americans to follow him. One of his first converts was a man named Elijah Poole, all right? Born October 7th, 1897. We got his tree almost done. I'm going to do a whole episode on Elijah Poole's genealogy. Okay. Poole lived in Sandersville, Georgia, until he was 3 years old. His father, Willie Poole, Sr., a Baptist minister, had been born in August 1866, the same year that the Congress passed the first monumental civil rights legislation and the 14th Amendment to the United States Constitution. His mother, Marie Cortez Evans, Cortez is her dad's name, so she's a Evans, was born in Cordell, Georgia in 1871. In 1899, the family moved back to Cordell, where Elijah began school. One afternoon before the winter break of 1907, while 10-year-old Elijah was walking back from school with a group of friends, an 18-year-old youth in the group decided to take a shortcut home. When the boy failed to return home by dusk, his father went to Elijah's home and asked Willie Poole Sr. whether he and his sons could help search for his son. In the woods surrounding the shortcut the boy had taken, they encountered the nightmare they had both dreaded. The boy dangled from a noose. His clothes had been ripped from his body, his face beaten so badly that it resembled a grotesque bloody mask. His neck seemed to stretch like rubber, and his body swung slowly in the autumn wind. So, as they're saying, unfortunately, most likely got lynched, hung, most likely by racist white folks, and that was happening. It was a scene young Elijah would never forget, one that would take on special significance when he became a minister like his father. I cried all the way home, Elijah Muhammad said in recalling the painful memory. Now remember, this is, you can see why he called the white man the devil, and why that when he heard Farad say that, it related to him, and I can understand that part. But all that happened very late in the 1800s and early 1900s when so-called white folks were starting to take over and starting doing all these atrocities, disfranchising, murdering black folks. Before that, it was so-called Negro rule. You were the landowners. You had all the plantations. You were the people in Congress. You were the presidents. You were the Indians. You were the founding fathers. All right? By 1914, Willie and Marie Poole had 14 children: Sam, Charles, Willie Jr., Tommy, Colette, Johnny, James, John, Herbert, Jarmine, Hattie, Lula, Annie, Emma, and of course, Elijah. Elijah took a job in 1914 at the sawmill where his father and some of his brothers worked. 5 years later, he married Clara Evans of Cordell from 1919 through 1923. Okay, so this is the Evans. My fault, guys. This is the Evans. From 1919 through 1923, Elijah remained at the sawmill, even though he hated it. With children to feed, he couldn't afford to be out of work. Their first child, Emmanuel, was born on February 3rd, 1921, and a daughter, Ethel, was born the following year on October 24th. Nevertheless, Elijah abruptly quit his job in early 1923 after a white foreman persisted in calling him a dumb, lazy N-word and similar pejoratives, fearing that he would either kill or be killed. Elijah moved his family to Detroit in 1923, where he found employment on the assembly line at the American Nut Company. From late 1924 through early 1925, he worked at the American Copper and Brass Company in Detroit, then quit in July for a better paying job on the assembly line at the Chevrolet Axle Company. At the end of 1926, Elijah was laid off for reasons which were never made clear. It is possible, however, that he was terminated because of his political activities. Elijah had discovered Garvey's Universal Negro Improvement Association and is believed to have joined the Detroit branch. Okay, not only that, there's pictures of him in the Moorish Science Temple, guys. We're gonna go over all that. All right, we're gonna look for those. We're gonna read that again. We've gone over this before. Who was coming out of this original Canaanite temple? Mr. Solomon created, not Drew Ali, but Drew Ali was one of his, and Elijah was there, and Fard most likely was around too. For the next 3 years, he worked at odd jobs. Hey, so we're not talking about the Nazis, so let's stay on topic. Thank you. When Fard arrived at Poole's home one day during the winter of 1930, Poole had deeply down on his luck and had resorted to drowning his sorrows in bootleg liquor. So yeah, he was drinking a lot. You know, there's a whole origin story on him, you know, before the Nation of Islam and getting arrested and things like that. Poole had told his children years later that my own wife was ashamed of me. At times she would have to go out and bring me in off the streets, holding me up on her shoulder. It was during this ebb in his life that Poole met the mysterious merchant from Mecca. One night after dinner at the Poole home, Fard told the man of the house that he wanted to share a secret with him. "You know me as Wallace Fard," the peddler said in a hushed tone. "But in truth, I am Allah, the Mahdi, whom everyone expected to come 2,000 years after Christ, who was crucified at Jerusalem." You guys hear that? So he's relating it to Jesus, not just Muhammad, but Jesus, right? Who got crucified in so-called Jerusalem. By the time Fard left the Poole home that evening, he had converted Elijah Poole, the man who would become one of his chief assistants. Fard charged new members $10 for an Arabic name to replace the surnames their families had borne since slavery. Since slavery, huh? Dodge the hijack. Not since slavery. That was their last names. This author's trying to say you guys got your last names from the white man. That's not true. Okay. After Poole paid the fees, his surname was changed to Karim. With the money his followers paid him for Arabic names, listen, he was making money of changing your names. That's the irony in that. Disconnecting you from your genealogy, your family history. With the money as his followers paid him for Arabic names, Fard opened a mosque in Detroit under the title of Temple of Islam. Bought himself a new car. He had a car now and lived very, very well at the Detroit hotel. That's what we just went over. He was living in a hotel where? In a white neighborhood. Elijah Karim assumed leadership of the Detroit Mosque in 1931, while Fard traveled about the country opening new chapters. In late 1931, Elijah Karim adopted a new name, Ghulam Ali. Fard, who taught his followers that Allah would automatically accept the soul of any non-white who murdered for Christians or Caucasians, became persona non grata in Detroit after a trial stemming from one of the most bizarre homicides in American history. All right, we went over this in part 1. On November 20th, 1932, police discovered that a member of the Allah Temple of Islam had murdered one of his boarders on a makeshift altar in the living room of his home. Shortly before noon, as his children and 8 black Muslim witnesses, the trial, the trial was over. Elijah Karim was sentenced to 10 years in prison. Fard was Witnesses watched Robert Karim, like Elijah Karim. He had received his name from Fard, ordered James Smith. His real last name was Harris, guys. Remember, we went over this. Harris, Robert Harris. Hey, possibly a Catawba Indian. A lot of the Harrises go back to Saponi and Catawba Indians, right? Now he's a Muslim. Ordered James Smith. So he ordered James Smith to lie on the altar, which was nothing more than a heavy oak table covered by a white sheet. Smith lay down, but suddenly had a change of mind. When he tried to get up, Robert Karim pulled part of a car's axle from beneath the sheet and struck Smith in the head, rendering him unconscious. As blood flowed from Smith's wound, Robert Karim's children yelled and screamed in horror. He ordered his wife to quiet them. Wow. Quiet them down. At exactly 12 o'clock noon, Robert Karim drove a butcher's knife through the heart of James Smith, a Christian, in an attempt to gain a victory against infidels for his gods. Frightened by the screaming, Robert Karim's neighbors summoned police. Upon the interrogation of Robert Karim, police discovered that his gods were in fact men. Robert Karim identified them as Master Wallace, Fard Muhammad, and Ghulam Ali, who was aka Elijah. Karim, who told police his slave name was Robert Harris, told you. Also slave name, right? He's saying the Harris are all slave names, right? Also confessed that he intended to kill 3 more people in order to go to heaven. His other 3 prospective victims, Robert Karim said, were Gladys Smith, no relation to the sacrificial victim, a 21-year-old welfare worker who had recently terminated his welfare benefits, and 2 Detroit lower court judges, the Honorable Edward J. Jeffries and Arthur E. Gordon. During the examination of Robert Karim's home, police found a booklet near the altar. It was entitled Secret Ritual of the Nation of Islam, and the author was Master Wallace Fard Muhammad. The next day, news of the sacrificial murder made front-page headlines in the Detroit Free Press and the Detroit News. Detroit detectives Oscar Berry and Charles Snyder led a posse of policemen to the Temple of Islam, located above a clothing store on Hastings Street. They approached a short, thin, olive-skinned man at the lectern as he addressed approximately 100 African-American, Filipino, and West Indian males. "Are you Ghulam Ali?" Berry inquired. "Yes," the man replied. Berry then answered Ali if Robert Karim was one of his followers. "Yes, Brother Karim is one of my students," Ali said. Remember, this is Elijah. "Then you're under arrest," Berry said. Ali was handcuffed and taken into custody. As Ali was being handcuffed, Snyder removed a pamphlet from the podium. It was a copy of the Secret Ritual of the Nation of Islam. The same booklet found in Karim's home. Several days later, Fard was observed leaving his hotel room at 1 West Jefferson Avenue near the Hastings Street Temple and placed under arrest. He identified himself as God of the Temple of People and Chief of the Voodoos. The arresting officers claimed. That's what they claimed, right? He also freely admitted, they said, that Karim and Ali were his followers, but denied any knowledge or approval of sacrificial killings. "They apparently misunderstood my teachings," Fard said absurdly. "Human sacrifice is not tolerated under Islam." But Fard's explanation was unconvincing. It belied what he had written in the manuals found in the possession of the Karim and Ali. Fard's denial of his own teachings raised doubts in Ali's mind about Fard's integrity. Talking about Elijah, right, when they're saying Ali here. Their relationship decayed after Fard's arrest. Fard was taken into custody and placed in a room specially designed for dangerous criminals on the psychopathic ward at Detroit's receiving hospital. Ali and Karim were also detained on the ward. All right. Go ahead and prove them. Big low key. Not they those names though still were brought by a lot of black Europeans though, big low key. Well, I'm not gonna address the chat. Sorry for interrupting, guys. During a probe of Fard's hotel room, detective discovered hundreds of letters from new members of the cult. Nearly every letter was identical in form and content. The writer asked Fard to substitute his slave name with Arabic one and enclosed money to cover the expense of doing so. Files removed from Fard's room indicated that he routinely changed the surnames of his followers upon payment to names such as Ben, Bey, Bey, Muhammad, Karim, Pasha, and Ali. All right. So again, just want to say, sorry to interrupt, guys, because sometimes I feel like I gotta address things because people think I'm just trying to censor people or be rude or anything. If you feel emotional about something I'm saying, the research speaks for itself, and your genealogy will tell you. So let's not generalize. All right, let's not generalize. Okay, catch up on the videos. If you're still with that whole out of Africa or West African slave trade false narratives. I'll continue now. Hopefully no more interruptions. A week later, during a court hearing to determine their sanity, Ali and Fard were given an ultimatum. Disband the Temple of Islam or face charges of accessory to homicide. Ali agreed to remain in Detroit to oversee the dismantling of the cult. Detectives Barry and Snyder escorted Fard to the train station, placed him on the train bound for Chicago, and ordered him never to return to Detroit. On May 25, 1933, Fard found himself in trouble with the law again. According to the police report, Fard had returned to Detroit and was living at the Fraymore Hotel in Paradise Valley when he was taken into custody. He gave his occupation, the reporting officer claimed, as Chief of the Voodoos. He was arrested for disorderly conduct and again ordered to leave the city for good. All right, so he might have not said that because that's the police reporting, right? They might have added that, but that's funny if he did say that. Fard fled to Chicago, where he was arrested in September for disorderly conduct, then released on his personal reconnaissance, in December 1933 during an FBI investigation of a cult called the Society of the Development of Our Own, the SDOO. The FBI's Detroit Bureau discovered that Ali and the dissolved Temple of Islam had become involved with Satahota Takahashi. Listen to this, a member of the Black Dragon Society of Japan who founded the SDOO. This is true right here. This is true. You can look it up. Begun in 1901 in Japan by Buddhist monk named Uchida Ryohi, the Black Dragon Society was a group dedicated to furthering Japanese imperial ambitions. While not an arm of the Japanese government, it had many friends in the Japanese government and armed forces, and was instrumental in Japan's invasion of Korea in 1910 and the subsequent seizure of Manchuria. To assist the society's aims, Takahashi entered the United States from Canada in 1930. He lived briefly in Tacoma, then for a short while in Seattle, and finally settled in Paradise Valley near Detroit. With access to seemingly limitless funds, the source of which sparked an FBI investigation, Takahashi was able to attract over 5,000 followers to the SDOO by early 1932, most of them African Americans, West Indians, East Indians, or Filipinos. Takahashi's influence upon the Nation of Islam was unmistakable. He was a frequent guest at the Nation of Islam's temples in Detroit and Chicago, and soon Ali, who was now using the name Elijah Muhammad, was peppering his speeches with pro-Japanese sentiments. The Japanese will slaughter the white man, the messenger said during a speech in 1933, a copy of which was later obtained by the FBI. It is Japan's duty to save you, he said in another lecture that year. Our brothers in the East, the Japanese, did not know that we, the blacks, were here until 60 years ago, he added. How would they not know that? That makes no sense. After finding out we were here, using the names of the devil, these all your last names. This is what Elijah Muhammad and Farad is saying, telling black folks that don't know a lot about history, that even lying to them, saying Japanese didn't know there was black people in America. Come on now. Elijah Muhammad said that, remember, there's already been World War I, right? And a lot of other wars where black folks were being sent, right? Of course they knew there was black folks here. Come on. Anyways. So Elijah Muhammad said that those are your devil names, your last names. They at once went back and told the Asiatic nation. Then they knew where the lost brother was. Now they are only waiting on the word of the prophet Fard. The Japanese army and navy are already strong enough to destroy this devil. Takahashi's influence wasn't the sole reason Elijah Muhammad supported Japan's escalating conflict with the United States. As the messenger viewed it, they had a common enemy, white people, right? Or is it the government of the United States? So, you know what they say, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Hoover, upon discovering Takahashi's power base in Paradise Valley, decided to destroy the SDOO and the Nation of Islam first. After Takahashi's arrest, Ali fled to Chicago before he could be apprehended. In 1934, Detroit police learned that Fard and Elijah Muhammad had not only returned to the city, but had reorganized the Holy Temple of Islam. The cult had nearly 1,000 followers in Detroit alone and thousands more in Chicago, Los Angeles, and several other large cities. Now, what I want to say, in case you guys think this is a white man speaking, this is a so-called black brother who wrote this book. I'm going to show you a video of him talking, doing a little presentation on another part on Wallace, okay? Bored by Fard's antics, police this time used a little physical persuasion to entice Fard, as they said in police parlance at the time, to quit the city. It was the last time he was ever seen by most black Muslims. The August 15, 1959 story in The New Crusader portrayed Fard as a common and career criminal. His first arrest, the story stated, had come on November 17, 1918 in Los Angeles, when he was taken into custody for committing assault with a deadly weapon. This much was true, which cannot be said of the most alarming aspect of the story. At least to black Muslims, all the allegation that Fard was himself a Caucasian, a member of the racial group he wanted eliminated from the face of the earth, right? Are we talking about self-hate here or what? What was going on? Right? Didn't he go by as so-called white in many cases? And when he was around white folks, oh yeah, I'm white like you guys. Elijah Muhammad, so-called messenger of the explosive religious cult that operates under the name of Temple of Islam with headquarters at 5335 South Greenwood Avenue, teaches his 70,000 odd Negro followers scattered across the U.S. that a white man called Master W.D. Fard Muhammad, who was a Turkish-born Nazi agent, worked for Hitler in World War II, is their God, charged by the FBI. So, hey, if this is true or not, that would be crazy. What did the FBI know, But, again, part 2 of this series, we went over all the different possible origin and ethnicities of Wallace Fard. Go ahead and take a look at it. You see what makes more sense. All right. It says the revelations took Elijah Muhammad by surprise. Hey, Jamal, I'ma just, yeah, I'll just time you out. You're not blocked. Go. Jamal said, who else came to tell that they were the... Hey, listen. Just because that sounds music to your ears, that's the whole point. It's music to your ears, so he was able to gain a lot of following. Because black folks had been disfranchised and had forgotten they were. That doesn't mean they didn't know. A lot of them still knew. All right, but again, using that to gain followers and then at the same time lying to them, changing their name, saying you're from somewhere else. What's up with all the added false narratives? That doesn't mean anything, man. The revelations took Elijah Muhammad by surprise. Fortunately for him, the story in The New Crusader was riddled with demonstrable errors, the obvious contradictions in one paragraph. It claimed that Elijah Muhammad had met Fard in 1934. Then in another, it had the two men meeting for the first time in prison in 1943. It also elevated Satahota Takahashi, founder of the Society for the Development of Our Own, to director of Japanese espionage in the United States. This was very far from the truth. Although there was substantive evidence to indicate Takahashi received help from several Japanese consulates in the East and in Los Angeles. The errors allowed Elijah Muhammad to discredit the article and the newspaper in his August 20, 1959 newspaper column for the Los Angeles Herald-Dispatch. Muhammad accused the African-American media of being dupes of their white God, who wrote false charges against him. They carefully picked out all the false and evil things said and wrote against me and my followers, Muhammad stated. He accused Time Magazine and U.S. News and World Report, which ran articles about the Fard allegations, of working in conjunction with the Ku Klux Klan to keep Negroes down. I mean, like Marcus Garvey had Ku Klux Klan friends. I mean, like Marcus Garvey, huh? I bet you Jamal will get mad at that too. I bet you Jamal hasn't seen my my Marcus Garvey video or my No More Misunderstanding series. Malcolm X is isolating the errors, also denounced the story. No white man in America who knows his own history, Malcolm X said during a rally at New York's Rockland Palace on August 16, should ever charge anyone with teaching race hate or racial supremacy. Many African American owned newspapers, he added, must have never written anything about the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's good works. But as Time magazine attacked them, many of these same papers, instead of checking with the Muslims to see if the charges were true or not, were satisfied to reprint and parrot the exact false charges of the white man. All right, so this is before Malcolm went to Arabia, right, to Mecca, and found out something. Truth hit him in the face. Then he came back a different man, and then he left the NOI, right, and he had some fallings with Farrakhan, and then what happened? Who's being blamed for his murder? That's a whole other thing. All right, so yeah. J. Edgar Hoover had been aware of Fard and his activities since 1931. 1 year after the Nation of Islam was established in Detroit that September, Hoover received a letter from President Herbert Hoover requesting the 31-year-old director of the Justice Department Bureau of Investigation, precursor to the FBI, to investigate a Chicago cult called the Moorish Science Temple of America. President Hoover made the request after receiving an invitation from the Grand Sheik of the Chicago branch of the Moors to address the annual gathering of the sect. Since the president had never heard of the group, he asked J. Edgar Hoover to determine whether the group was politically worthy of presidential attention or just another bunch of crackpots. Hoover deliberately misled the president by telling him that the sect had only one active member, the black barber, who extended the invitation. He knew full well that the Moorish Science Temple of America had over 50,000 followers, with branches in nearly 30 cities. He apparently lied to prevent the president from addressing the group. Incidental to the Bureau's background checks on the MSTA, or Moorish Science Temple, the FBI's Chicago and Detroit bureaus learned from welfare workers that the Moorish Science Temple splinter groups had developed, and that one of them was known as the Holy Temple of Islam. All right? Coming out of Moorish Science Temple. Future videos, we're gonna talk about this again. Future episodes on this series. We've already talked about this before. The Holy Temple of Islam differed from the Moorish Science Temple of America. FBI investigators learned in that the former openly preached that white people were devils and that it practiced a form of voodoo. J. Edgar Hoover, that's the hijack. This is what they're saying, right? J. Edgar Hoover, after advising the president against accepting the invitation, terminated his investigation. But during the Thanksgiving holidays a year later, Hoover reopened the investigation of what the FBI called the Allah Temple of Islam. The reason for the new probe was, of course, the sacrificial murder of James Smith by Robert Karim. In late 1957, after receiving reports alerting him to the explosion in the Nation of Islam's membership, the FBI's Chicago field office requested that Hoover renew the FBI's investigation of Fard. For the information of the Honolulu, Portland, and Washington field offices, the Chicago special agent in charge wrote in a memo to Hoover on October 3rd, as a result of a recent inspection of the Chicago office, it was suggested that a concerted effort be made to determine the whereabouts of W.D. Fard, reportedly the founder of the Nation of Islam. During the investigation, the FBI discovered that Master Wallace Fard Muhammad was actually Wallace Ford. Listen, this is the part that Jamal and the rest of a lot of the members do not want to accept. He was this person. They try to say, no, that wasn't him. That wasn't him. No, he actually was. Fingerprints and everything. And we got the records. Like, even their own members tell you. That video I showed you earlier from Alam Khan, he's showing pictures of Wallace Ford, mugshots. These are people, associated. So, some of them just still don't want to accept. But yeah, during the investigation, the FBI discovered that Master Wallace Fard Muhammad was actually Wallace Ford, a Californian with an extensive criminal record. The FBI's attempt to chronicle Fard's background struck pay dirt on January 17, 1958, when it interviewed a woman who was Fard's common-law wife in the late 1920s. Hazel Ford Osborne Evelsizer, discovered by the FBI's Los Angeles field office, was a godsend. Using information from interviews with her, the Bureau was able to track Fard's years in America as far back as 1919. And in so doing, to demystify him. according to Osborne, whose maiden name was Hazel Barton. She had met a man named Wallace D. Ford in Los Angeles in 1919. Ford, whom she learned had come from Oregon around the beginning of World War I, was operating a small cafe on South Flower Street when they first met. Initially, she thought Ford was a very dark complected Mexican. Later, as they began dating, she learned that his ancestry was more exotic. Ford, as the FBI later learned, was born in 1891 in Hawaii on February 25th. That's what he had told her. This was significant since Black Muslims commemorate Savior's Day on February 26th. His father was Sared Ford, a Briton who had settled in New Zealand. But this is what he had told his wife. His mother, Beatrice Ford, was of Maori, a member of the very dark-skinned tribe of Polynesian origin, who in the early 1900s comprised more than 95% of the population of New Zealand. So literally a backward story. In this case, he told his ex-wife that his dad was the white one and his mom was the so-called black one, right? Unlike what Elijah and supposedly Fard told Elijah, we're going off what Elijah said. All right, so as you guys can see, we've gone over the different origin stories. We've gone over this on part 1 and 2. Make sure you're caught up. He was semi-literate, Evelsi, sir. Then Barton said, and she frequently wrote letters for him to his parents in New Zealand. On one occasion, while snooping through his dresser drawers, she found a letter addressed to Fred Dodd. She knew, she said, from reading the letter that Fred Dodd and Wallace Ford were identical. When they first met, Evel Sizer said Ford was living with another woman, by whom he had fathered a child, a boy. After Evel Sizer began dating him, Ford asked his wife for a divorce, but she refused. Furious, Ford finally left her and the boy and moved in with Evel Sizer. Ford and Evel Sizer began living together from 1920, and she bore him a son. I got his image, I got his picture right here. He died very young, with Hazel, the son he had with Hazel. In 1926, Ford and Edward Donaldson, one of his Chinese cohorts, were arrested for conspiring to illegally sell a pint of bootleg to a police office. See, they were selling liquor during Prohibition, gangster stuff, like the mafia and all that, in violation of the Prohibition Act. Ford paid a $40 fine, but before his court appearance on the bootleg charge, Ford was arrested for illegally selling heroin. Listen, heroin in violation of the California State Poison Act. Wow. And there's sources for this. Following his conviction, Ford was sent to San Quentin, where he remained until May 27, 1929. All right, hold on, guys. So PBC says, you're gonna get blocked now. But anyways, he was doing the same thing N-word do now. He ain't giving out all his info to nobody, especially when he had the laws. So you're making an excuse and conjecturing. You're making an excuse for him. Wow, man. Yeah, sure, man. Yeah, the law. Why is the law after you? Why are you doing that in the first place then? If you're so-called Allah, if you're Jesus, the second coming, make it make sense, man. All right, make it make sense, man. Again, if you're brave enough, you think you're gonna come try to debunk me, you're gonna get blocked right away. Don't interrupt. So within a week of his release, Ford left Los Angeles and moved to the predominantly African-American section of Chicago. He found a job there selling medical supplies. Although Ford had severed their relationship, Evil Sizer said that they corresponded from the time he left Los Angeles until 1932, which coincided with Ford's arrest in Detroit. She mailed her letters to him, she said, in care of general delivery in either Chicago or Detroit, which also happened to be the locations of the two most active temples of the Nation of Islam. Ford never complied with her request for regularly scheduled child support, although he sent her considerable amounts of money from time to time. Again, we're going to go over those records when he was living with this person and the other wife. We've showed it on, I believe, part 1. So make sure to catch that again. There's a whole other section of another book we're going to read on his, the genealogy, his history. So, stay tuned for that on future parts of this, right? Evel Sizer recalled that when last you saw Ford in 1932, he was driving a 1929 model, a Ford coupe with California license plates. She said he had white silk sheets over the seat of the car, and when she asked about them, he told her that she could have them. He wouldn't be needing them anymore, he said, because he was returning to his parents in New Zealand. Huh. Another fake origin story. Perhaps most notably, Ford mentioned to Evelsizer that he now ate only one meal a day, the standard black Muslim practice, and told her that this was his new way of life. With the information from Evelsizer in hand, the FBI's Los Angeles field office contacted the Detroit FBI office and requested that it interview Erdman D. Bainan, who had written a study of the Nation of Islam in 1937. That's what we read on part 1, that article he wrote. After tracking down Bainan's relatives, FBI agents learned that he had died some time ago. Huh. Wow. But that his daughter Marion Kieber, who had gone along with him on his journeys into the darkest African America, was familiar with the Nation of Islam. What does that mean? On February 11, 1958, FBI agents showed Kieber 2 mugshots of Ford, one taken upon his arrest in California in 1926, the other taken in Detroit in 1933. She had vivid memories of Ford indeed. Few ever forgot his striking appearance, and she said both photographs closely resembled the man she had known by that name. When agents showed her the portrait of Ford, she said there was no doubt in her mind that Ford and Ford were the same man, okay? And that's the pictures I have on the cover or the thumbnail of part 1 and part 2 that they're talking about right now. The one on part 3 right now is another mugshot with his haircut. After spending the next 2 months hunting Ford without success, the Chicago field office, which coordinated the COINTELPRO, notified Hoover that it was abandoning its efforts. The investigation into Ford's identity remained dormant until September 1962, when the House Un-American Activities Committee decided to hold hearings on the alleged subversive activities of the Nation of Islam. Congressman Francis Walter, chairman of HUAC, asked Hoover for the FBI's files on the Nation of Islam, particularly anything it had on Ford. All right, guys, hold on. Let me just look at the chat. Yeah, see, Tony, go be a crybaby, go be a herd troll somewhere else, man. This is what I'm saying. I'm gonna go debate people who have a religious mind state. You're stuck on belief like a religious, like it's like going up to, you know, a Hindu and saying, hey, Krishna's not this, or like going up to a Christian and say, hey, Jesus is not this. It's the same thing, man. Yeah, get out of my channel, man. You haven't been here the last 8 years, man. Eventually, this is all be mainstream one day. You'll see. You'll remember. After receiving the startling information on Ford, notably the fact that his father was a Caucasian, Walter, and Congressman L. Mandel Rivers concluded that HUAC could successfully disrupt and curb the growth of NOI if the information on Ford was released to the media at an opportune time. Cognitive dissonance, man. In February 1963, the Chicago field office learned from wiretaps and its informant inside the NOI that Elijah Muhammad was still too ill to address his followers at the upcoming annual Savior's Day convention. The informant advised the FBI that Malcolm X would speak on Muhammad's behalf. On February 19th, Hoover sent a memo to the Chicago field office which stated that now was the time to use the dossier on Ford to neutralize the NOI. If they leaked the dossier to his friends in the media, Hoover wrote, the impact on Elijah Muhammad and his followers would be tremendous, and the story could well serve to make Muhammad appear ridiculous. Before releasing the story, a final attempt was made to track Donaldson, the Chinese gentleman arrested with Ford in 1926. In May, after 3 long months of tracking Donaldson, the search was abandoned. And yes, you know, definitely, after a while, the FBI is literally trying its hardest to dismantle the Nation of Islam. We're not arguing that. But what people are having a hard time is understanding who Ford, you know, was, the man before he came to Detroit, you know. And y'all, none of y'all can tell or prove his origin. You know, this ain't a debate. This is what I'm saying. People think you could debate stuff like this, like saying the sky is purple. You're trying to debate me, the sky ain't blue. I'm not gonna waste my time. Debating is for you guys who do that I know y'all do that all the time on your other channels, entertaining people trying to get views. We don't do that here. The research speaks for itself. We're on part 3 already, and I got a lot more parts coming. Yeah, be ready to be more hurt. In the meantime, Malcolm X's prominence in the national media had risen sharply, so much so that he now overshadowed Elijah Muhammad. By July, Hoover had firm evidence that Malcolm X's popularity had precipitated intense jealousy on the part of Muhammad's sons, Herbert and Wallace. Hoover decided that it was time to take advantage of the rivalry, and by doing so, to force Malcolm X out of the Nation of Islam. The FBI's dossier on Fard was mailed to several large newspapers on Independence Day in 1963. On July 28th, the story broke in the Los Angeles Evening Herald Examiner, a Hearst newspaper, under the headline, "Black Muslims Founder Exposed as a White." 2 days later, Hoover received a memo from Chicago advising him that the story had had the desired impact on Elijah Muhammad. According to the memo, Muhammad was quite riled up about the story and had ordered John Ali, National Secretary of the NOI, to hire a good lawyer who is 100% for us, to sue the Herald Examiner. Ali contacted William R. Ming, Jr., a prominent Chicago lawyer, whose interviews with Muhammad were recorded by the FBI. It was clear to the FBI from the taped telephone conversations that Muhammad was being evasive in his answers to Ming. To make matters worse, on August 8, 1963, Hazel Evelsizer and one of Fard's relatives wrote Elijah Muhammad a long letter and included supporting documentation in which they asked for a $100,000 reward, which the messenger had been rash enough to offer in a front-page story in Muhammad Speaks. He had challenged the Hearst Corporation or anyone else to prove that Wallace Ford and Wallace Fard were the same person. Elijah Muhammad refused to pay up, arguing that police and San Quentin prison records dating back to the early 1920s had been altered. He also contended that fingerprints identifying Fard as Dodd had been doctored. The FBI knew that Elijah Muhammad never had any intention of paying the reward. He had never even placed the money in escrow. In the summer of 1963, Malcolm X knew none of this information about Fard. He believed, like nearly every other Muslim, a completely different version of Fard's 3 years with the Nation of Islam, that Fard had chosen Elijah Muhammad to be his messenger, or holy apostle on earth, and that Fard had returned to Mecca in 1934. This is what they were telling everybody. He remained convinced that the apparition he saw in his prison cell was a manifestation of Fard. And since he knew nothing about 1932 press reports of Fard's activities in Detroit, he dismissed the Hearst story as more government disinformation. Malcolm X was in the nation's capital when the story appeared. After conferring by telephone with Muhammad about the article, Malcolm X told reporters that President John F. Kennedy administration had planted the story to enhance the image of the so-called Negro civil rights leaders, who were scheduled to lead the march on Washington on August 28th. The source of this slander is the government itself, he declared. Guys, don't create another account to come troll again. You gotta keep getting blocked, man. Who says that NOI is all good? Religions are all man-made, man. The source of his slander is the government itself, he declared. All right. So that was the end of chapter 10. The end of chapter 10. Hold on. Let me bring this up. That was this book. That was this guy's book from the 1990s, right? And we know that the FBI was trying to dismantle. We're not arguing that. They were targeting these people. We're not arguing that. All right. Wallace Max Ford. Originally born in Los Angeles as Wallace Ford Jr., the son of Wallace Ford and Hazel Burton. Okay? Wallace Ford, right? Right? That's Master Fard right here. Remember what they did to the picture to alter it a little? We saw it in the beginning. Okay? It says here, Wallace Ford or Fard was also known as Wallace Fard Muhammad, and he was the founder of the Nation of Islam in the 1930s in Detroit, Michigan. He disappeared in 1934. So he came out of nowhere because there's no origin. You know, nobody can say what he really can, and then he just disappeared, right? So mystical. So after 1934, several arrests in Detroit, and Elijah Muhammad took over as leader of the Nation of Islam. Elijah Muhammad claimed that Wallace Ford, aka Wallace Fard Muhammad, was actually God in person, the Messiah. The Messiah. Isn't that cult talk? Somebody would say, hey, that's cult talk. And I know the word cult just means hidden, or, but you know what I mean. Says here, in Truth Continuum, Nation of Islam's founder was Afghani, suffered from diabetes, which was known to them. We're going to get into what this book he's holding right here. I'm going to get into that in another episode. W.D. Farr's Bible of Islam identified a century-old mystery is solved. All right, we're going to get into that. We're also going to get back to this book right here. All right, I told you, like I said, I got a lot of more episodes coming, guys. Finding W.D. Fard, unveiling the identity of the founder of the Nation of Islam. As much as you don't like it, history is history. That's what I do here. Who was Fard? Who was Fard, huh? Who was chapter 3? We're probably going to get into that next time. Okay. Black Gods of the Metropolis. We'll probably get into this book as well. This is a really good one. All right. And we're going to get into his supposed connection to Muhammad Abdullah, who they were trying to say is Fard in later years, which is not. We're going to show why. We're going to show it on future videos, guys. Look at this video right here. Check it out. So again, shout out to Alam Khan Publications. These are people from inside the nation themselves. Book is amazing, brother. See, these are people from the. That's why I don't pay attention to most of you, because you guys, the ones that were arguing, you guys don't even know your own people are saying this. All right, this is the same guy we've been showing. That's Wallet.Fard, right? He's showing a bunch of newspaper articles, right? Check Fingerprints Monday. And we're gonna get over. We're probably gonna go over all these articles. Little by little. This is an outtake from the November 24, 1932 Detroit Free Press newspaper. This is only known photo where Master Fard is sitting next to another NOI member. Okay? We're going to go over all this stuff. And that book they're looking at through. You guys are going to see what that book is. And what its connection to the Jehovah's Witness book, Deliverance. All right? Let me not spoil too much of what's coming up. I just want to show you that be ready. There's more pain. There's more hurt, if that's what you consider this is. You guys are not ready to let go. A lot of you are not ready to let go. And so they're going to probably bash the comment section. I'm going to have to block a lot of people in the comment section as well. And yeah, because we don't got time to deal with people who are hurt. I did that with Pan-Africans. I did that with the Moorish Science Temple hijacks that came here and disrespectful and all trying to call me names and get all upset and again, just go over the info. All right. I appreciate you guys tuning in today again. And don't want to make the videos too long. Just wanted to go over this real quick again and read this chapter. We get a lot of different perspectives. All right. That's what I try to do. What's been written historically. I do that a lot, and I'm not just trying to just push my thing. I'm showing you this is not just me saying it. I'm reading people letting you know the same thing. Okay. Appreciate you guys again to be here. I'll give you your Sunday back. Thanks for tuning in. If you're just got here, try to watch from the beginning. If you just arrived at this series on part 3, make sure you watch part 1 and 2. It's already up. All right. Check out part 1 and 2. That's how you know you're on the mark. Yeah, Tony. You're right. That's, get people upset. If people wouldn't be upset if this wouldn't be true. Truth hurts. That's why that phrase comes. Truth hurts. That's where that phrase comes from. And I understand why it hurts. I'm trying to help you, not make you upset. All right. I hope you understand that one day. I hope you guys really understand that one day and get out of the religious mind state, blind following. We've all been there. I mean, I grew up Catholic. I was blinded by that, you know, until I realized, wow, that breath of life is in you, but not you. You are co-creators. You're not the creator. And he's not the creator. All right. He's not no Messiah. Pura vida, mi gentes. Yeah. Much love and respect. Pura vida, mi gente. Yeah. I love y'all, man. Take care. I'll see y'all soon. Probably tomorrow. I try to do maybe another Christmas origin episode. All right. Christmas is coming up. All right. Don't get mad at me for that either. Come on. Much love and respect. I appreciate you guys. Shout out to all the moderators. Shout out to all my Patreon supporters and all the new channel members. Thank you, Kimberly. Welcome to the club. Welcome. Thank you. You're very welcome. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate you guys very much. Pura vida. Pura vida. Wow.